Breaking news coming out of the college basketball world, and Bill Self apparently reports that he signed a lifetime contract to remain the head coach of the Kansas Jayhawks. He's been there since 2003 at the helm in Lawrence, Kansas. His current contract was set to expire in March, but is being replaced with a new 5-year rolling agreement that automatically adds 1 year at the conclusion of each season. Looking back at what he's done, of course, the Jayhawks have been a staple when it comes to the NCAA tournament. They finished 21-9 this past season, reaching the tournament, of course, but falling to USC in the second round. But you got to look, the numbers stack up there. 2-time AP Coach of the Year in 2009 and 2016. You have to think Bill Self is going to be around for a long time, so the Jayhawks will be in the competition moving forward. All right, let's bring in our Matt Norlander with this breaking news here at Bill Self, a 5-year deal that continues to add on each year after that. You want to explain that for us for a little bit?
Sure. This basically means that Bill Self is never going to coach anywhere else in college basketball. Not that he was ever leaving Kansas to begin with, but he's got the security for a lifetime contract in coaching if he wants it. There had been a little bit of curiosity in college athletics over the looming punishments that are expected to come for Kansas and his program and Bill Self. And if that were to be significant enough, might he leave Kansas and just kind of, try and get a job in the NBA, be it head coach or assistant? This news would indicate that he's not necessarily looking to do that ever. It is going to create some conversation because Kansas is currently in the individual accountability resolution process, which we often refer to as the IARP. That is a judicial entity outside of the NCAA. So Kansas was caught up in all of the FBI stuff, Brandon, right? And it requested to not go through the NCAA's Committee on Infractions. And it was granted that request like all these other schools. But the process is taking a long time. We don't know when Kansas is going to be punished. We don't know how severe the punishments are going to be. But the expectation in college basketball is whenever those punishments come down, be it later this year or, yes, maybe even into 2022, Kansas will be facing a postseason ban of at least 1 year and maybe 2. Bill Self will be facing a suspension of at least a half a year, if not an entire year. So this contract just protects him beyond that. It's obviously a big statement for a university which, oh, by the way, doesn't have a current athletic director. I've actually been told by sources Kansas has really narrowed in on its next choice for an athletic director. We might actually find that out pretty soon here. But this is obviously good news for Bill Self. It will also create perhaps some conversation about how necessary it was and how it makes Kansas look in advance of those significant and expected to be meaningful and detrimental sanctions coming either later this year or in 2022.
Keeping them locked in there for the 5 years. And as you mentioned on that contract, when you look at this, the timing, because as I mentioned, that deal was going to run out in March. So why now and maybe not wait until into the summer and maybe right in the middle of next year? Why now was this the opportunity to get this done?
The answers to all of your questions in college basketball, at least, is recruiting. That's why. Bill Self has actually been on the record talking about how the saga that his program has gone through, some of which is on him, by the way. He has multiple level 1 accusations laid upon him that he and the school are aggressively fighting, I will also note. But because of that, Kansas has not been able to recruit at the level that it has in the past. And because of that, your viability big picture at the top of the sport, Brandon, suffers. And so to announce this and to basically tell, of course, boosters and the fans, but also players in the class of 2022 and 2023 and 2024, just so you know, no matter what happens here, Bill Self is going to be the coach of Kansas. And that carries a lot of weight considering how many pros he's put out of that program. He's won a national championship. Kansas has, if you look at their win-loss record and their conference success, I mean, it's been a top 3 program in college basketball for basically the past 10 to 15 years. So why now? Recruiting and getting this done sooner than later is a very important thing. In fact, if I'll just real quick tie this into another situation elsewhere, Sean Miller is going into a final year of his contract next season at Arizona. And behind the scenes, there is a stalemate situation because I'm told by sources Sean Miller has no desire to coach a final season with 1 year on his deal. It just doesn't happen in major college athletics at the power conference level. You don't have coaches going into their final year. You don't have that final year. That doesn't exist. So whereas that is a stalemate, Bill Self in Kansas, with an interim athletic director, were able to get this done to remove any kind of speculation in the name of recruiting and the benefit of the program, big picture going forward.
You mentioned there, of course, now he's locked up for 5 years. This helps with recruiting in the future. Looking at how the Big 12 has been stacked the last couple of years, especially this year in the tournament, looking at Bill Self and what happened with them with Kansas this year, are they set up to be a possible contender? Is Bill Self the guy that can get them back in that winner's circle?
Well, probably, but I have to be honest, and I said this on HQ after Kansas got upset by USC in the NCAA tournament. You know, that might be Kansas's last NCAA tournament performance for a year or two. No one can say with any certainty how long or how major of a punishment the IARP will dole out to Kansas. Again, whenever that comes, is it 4 months from now? Is it 14 months from now? We haven't had one case yet adjudicated by that governing body. So when you ask if Kansas can be a contender, you know, within the scope of the regular season, yes, Kansas is Kansas. It's always going to be a factor in the Big 12. It gets really interesting. We just come off Chris Beard's introductory press conference at Texas. That's going to be a major player there. And by the way, Baylor, been awesome the past 2 seasons, one of the top 2 or 3 programs in the sport. But from a postseason contending standpoint, no one knows yet. I mean, Kansas might be eligible for the 2022 postseason. It might not. It could face a 1-year ban, a 2-year ban, depending on how the IARP looks at the case, looks at the evidence, the wiretaps that were shown and played in court as it pertained to the FBI case. So we don't know what their postseason fate is. But in terms of regular season, yes, Kansas is still going to be a team that is a factor and a top 25 level team going forward. I think regardless of how severe the punishments are, because of the stature of the program, and Bill Self is regarded in the sport as like a top 5, top 10 X&O coach. One
thing we know for sure, he'll be locked in for the next 5 years here in Kansas. They're taking over in the helm. Matt Norlander is always breaking down the breaking news, where Bill Self now locked in for 5 years. And take a look here. The Jayhawks posted on Twitter. It's not official until it gets to the Twitterverse. Kansas signs their head coach, Bill Self, putting pen to paper on that lifetime contract. That 5-year rolling agreement automatically adds on a year at the conclusion of each season. Bill Self locked in, as you're saying, it, a lifetime deal. Don't forget, the conversation continues on the Eye of College Basketball podcast. You can catch our Matt Norlander as well as Gary Parrish and others up there in Indianapolis with everything going on with the Final Four. The guys are breaking in with emergency pods. You might want to give them a listen, download, and give them a follow.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.